Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of this Movember cooking class. Thankful to have everybody here. We're going to be cooking some comfort food classics tonight. I just wanted to give a big shout out to the KPMG Movember team, KeepMosGrowing, for first of all having me back for another opportunity to deliver this class to you, and for all the great work that they do in the name of men's health, raising money and raising awareness as part of our Movember 2022 campaign. And they've raised over $1 million so far throughout the years, which is an incredible achievement. And we continue to find new ways, like this cooking class, to continue to raise even more money for this great cause. So before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll let everybody take a break here to allow them to do that. And just to make sure that all the tech is working here, I'm not a IT professional by any means. If somebody could just let me know in the YouTube chat if you can hear me okay, the video is coming in all right. And then we'll get started in just a few short moments after everybody's gone ahead and preheated their oven to 400 degrees. Great, thank you, Brandon. So to introduce myself, my name is Adam Kelly. By day, I'm a senior manager in our E&R audit practice. By night, home cook. You may have seen in some of the materials that came out, I had the opportunity to participate on one of Food Network's new cooking shows at the time, called Wall of Chefs. It's now in its third season. Had so much fun doing it, have so much fun in the kitchen at all times. And, really just wanted to teach you, some of these great classics that I love to make, especially as the weather gets colder, the mustaches get longer. As you can see, not much of a mustache grower myself, but we do lots of great things like this to help raise awareness and money for the cause. So where am I going with this? I know many of you may have, tuned into one of these before. In our first year, we learned how to build a better burger. Just last year, we learned how to make some delicious Mexican chorizo tacos. And now, today, we're going to make two of my favorite, and I think just about everyone's favorite comfort food classics. And we're going to make a delicious 3-ingredient mac and cheese, literally just 3 ingredients. When you think about that stuff that comes in the box, that's one less ingredient than the box version. So this recipe for the mac and cheese is going to incorporate things that you likely already have on hand, and if you don't, it's great things to stock up on because they're non-perishable. Our 3 ingredients today are just macaroni, some evaporated milk, as well as of course, the star of the show, some cheese, something you probably always have hanging around. And then what we're going to pair it with today is some delicious, oven-baked crispy chicken bites. Call them bites, call them fingers. They're probably going to look more like a finger, but nonetheless, the same delicious approach and fantastic results that we're going to get out of it. And if you want to kick things up a notch, I'll teach you how to make your own famous buffalo wing sauce. We'll toss the chicken fingers in those, and it's going to be a crowd pleaser for the entire family. So just a reminder, we may have had some additional joiners here. So if you haven't done so already, please go ahead, preheat that oven to 400 degrees. So what are we most excited about? We can use the YouTube chat throughout the evening. Some members of the KPMG Movember team are going to be monitoring that chat. So, if you have any questions as we go through the recipe, everybody does have the recipe card that was sent around yesterday. So, if you want to hopefully make this recipe again, hopefully it is a crowd pleaser and you want to make it again. So you'll always have that recipe card to go back to. Or, if maybe I'm moving too quickly, or, there's a good chance I might even skip a step, please use that YouTube chat to let us know, and we'll make sure we respond to any of your questions or your comments. So to kick things off, what are you most excited about? Are you more of a mac and cheese person, or are you more of a crispy chicken finger person? Let me know in the chat. I'm curious. I think for me, probably leaning towards the chicken fingers, but this is the perfect pairing. Kellyanne saying mac and cheese. You can't go wrong with a good mac and cheese. Alex, more of a chicken bite kind of guy. Sarah, I completely agree. I mean, like I said, they're the perfect pairing, and it's a pretty tough choice to decide between the two. Okay, so I mean, throughout the evening tonight, I am going to be switching between a few different camera angles, so hopefully that all works out. So what we're going to do now, let's go ahead and grate our cheese. So it's 6 ounces of cheese. I know not everybody might have a scale or have a concept of what 6 ounces looks like. So let's go ahead and get that shredded. I mean, just using a normal box grater here. Go ahead and get that shredded. And once I shred my cheese here, I'll let everybody know what it sort of equates to in cups. As I said, despite being a good group of accountants here, we might not be able to quantify, what 6 ounces quite looks like. So for this, I mean, you generally want to use just any sort of good melting cheese. That can be obviously a cheddar like I'm using today. Gruyere would work great, a Swiss. And that's the other best thing about this recipe is that you can really use just what's lying around in your fridge. All right, so that cheese is good and grated. I mean, if I had to eyeball this, I'm going to say it's about 2 cups of shredded cheese, but let's find out. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm going to go ahead and say it's about 2 cups of shredded cheese. I mean, if you have a little bit more, nobody's going to get angry at you. There's never a problem with too much cheese in the world, that's for sure. So next, what we're going to have to do is just wait for everybody's oven to get preheated a little bit. But what we can do is get started by grabbing our baking sheet. And I'm just going to get this cheese out of the way. All right, so let's go ahead and grab that baking sheet. Place it as so. And what we're going to do now is we're going to toast our panko breadcrumbs. So a lot of you may be familiar with panko breadcrumbs, but for those of you who aren't, it's a Japanese style of breadcrumb. It's a little bit coarser than your standard breadcrumb. And what that's going to allow for these chicken bites is lots of good crunchiness. I mean, when you bite into a chicken, chicken tender or chicken bite or whatever we're calling it today, you want that good crunch. And these panko breadcrumbs are going to allow you to do that, but we're going to even kick it up a further notch here by toasting those breadcrumbs before we apply them to our chicken. That's my secret here, is to toast those breadcrumbs before, because that's going to ensure that the breadcrumbs that stick onto the chicken are crispy, and we're not going to have to wait for the oven to do that work for us after. So what I've done is I've measured out my 1.5 cups of panko breadcrumbs, as you can see here. What we can do is just go ahead and dump those onto the baking sheet. And you want to give them you want to spread them out, fairly evenly here. So just give that baking sheet a good shake, and that should do it for you. And then, the good thing to making all things crispy in life is just a little bit of oil. So I've got my canola oil spray here. Many people would know it as Pam. And what we're going to go ahead and do is just spray these breadcrumbs with a little bit of oil. And what I recommend doing is just making sure that you spray vertically. You know, if you on a bit of an angle, you might spray those breadcrumbs right off the sheet. So what we'll do is now is just go ahead and spray those with a bit of oil. Just going to take a pause here and check the YouTube chat if there's any questions. And then if anyone's oven hasn't preheated yet, you know, please let me know in the chat. I know some ovens take longer than others. Mine here takes forever. So let me know in the chat if you're not ready to put the breadcrumbs in, and we can take a quick pause until everybody's ready. So we have a question from Attila just asking if there's, oops, just a bit of a makeshift home studio here. We have a question from Attila asking if there's any chance you can use regular oil. Yeah, I think you could use just a small amount of oil, but what I would do is ensure that if you're going to take that method, put the panko breadcrumbs in a bowl first, and then toss them, you know, very well with that oil. What the spray is going to do is allow a nice even distribution. But if you don't have the spray, you know, just drop a little drizzle of oil in there and make sure it's all incorporated so that all the breadcrumbs will brown evenly. All right, so it seems like everybody's oven is preheated now. So let's go ahead and put those breadcrumbs into our 400-degree oven. You can use, you know, the middle rack. And what we're going to do is just toast those breadcrumbs. So they're going to change from that white color to a beautiful toasty brown. And depending on, you know, your own oven, that can take, you know, between about 3 and 5 minutes. So we're just going to want to make sure we keep a close eye on those before we move into any next steps. So let's go ahead, get these in the oven. Okay, Google, 3-minute timer. I'm going to trust my friend Google over there. It's always important to set timers, especially for me, because let me tell you, I often forget about things in the oven. So we're going to go ahead, let those breadcrumbs toast for about 3 to 5 minutes. You know, keep a close eye on them after the first 2 minutes or so, just to ensure that you don't burn them. If you do, you know, the bag of panko you bought likely has more than 1.5 cups, so you can start over. They're only going to be about 5 minutes behind. So let's talk a little bit more about the Movember campaign. So as I mentioned, you know, this is our third time doing the Movember cooking class. And as you've seen come out in the Movember newsletter, weekly newsletter, you know, there's so many other great initiatives that are going on across KPMG to raise money in the name of men's health. So we do ask that for everyone participating in this cooking class, and we did have over 100 signups again. So I am quite honored and thank you. But if you are participating in this cooking class, if you haven't done so already, there is just a minimum suggested donation of $10. So we would appreciate if you could just log on to the link for the KeepMosGrowing campaign and donate your $10. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. And the amount of money and tastes you're going to, you know, save from not having to use these box versions throughout the rest of your life, it's going to be worth that $10. All right, so I'm just going to crouch down here, keep that eye on my breadcrumbs. I'm about a minute and a half in. So while we're waiting for those breadcrumbs to toast, just ask that everybody has sort of a medium-sized bowl ready, because what we're going to do is make a batter for our chicken. So we're going to first batter the chicken, and then what we're going to do is toss it in those wonderfully toasted panko breadcrumbs to ensure the best crunch possible. And if you see that your panko breadcrumbs are, toasting only in certain areas, you're seeing that brown color come through. Sometimes, ovens have hot and cold spots. So what I suggest that you do in that case, and I'm saying this because it looks like it's happening to me, is just to give those breadcrumbs a little shake, which should allow the rest of them to toast nice and evenly. So I'm at the 3-minute mark for myself. It doesn't look like my breadcrumbs are quite there. So I'm going to continue to let them toast for another minute or two. But like I said, this is the time to keep an eye on it because they can go from toasty to very burnt very quickly. I'm just giving them a quick mix around, similar to giving that pan a shake. Just want to make sure that all those breadcrumbs get nice and toasted and we don't have any burnt ones. So you can see, we're just about there, maybe one more minute. So like I said, I've got that bowl out ready to make my batter as soon as we get these breadcrumbs finished and toasted. And then you'll need a second bowl just to dump those breadcrumbs into once they come out of the oven, nice and toasty. All right, so as you can see here, I've got a nice golden brown on those breadcrumbs. I'm trying to get a good angle here, but as you can see, nice toasted golden brown. So I'm going to go ahead and dump those into my bowl, hopefully without spilling half of them. And what you can do is you can save that sheet pan because the chicken tenders are going to go right back onto that sheet pan. Okay, so what are we going to do next? We are going to make that batter. So what we're going to do now, we're going to crack one egg into the bowl. And to that egg, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of flour, all purpose, whatever you've got on hand works just fine. I'm going to dump that in there. And then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise. And the mayonnaise in this situation is going to act almost like some oil. I mean, that's really all mayonnaise is. So it's going to, continue to help crisp up our chicken tenders. I'm going to dump that 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise in there. And then a tablespoon and a half of mustard. So today, it's suggested to use Dijon. It's got some of the most flavor. Today I'm going to use one of my favorite local mustards, Coslicks. It's available at St. Lawrence Market. They have tons of varieties. If you've never checked it out, let me tell you, it's delicious. So a tablespoon and a half of that mustard. And then about a half teaspoon of salt. And just about a half teaspoon of pepper as well. So if you're using a grinder like me, it's just going to be a couple grinds. Doesn't seem to be working too well. Oh, yeah, we do seem to be having a bit of an issue with the camera, don't we? All right, hopefully that fixes itself, but for now, let's just switch back to this view where we don't have to deal with that. Thanks, Peter, for calling that out. Okay, so now what I'm just going to show on this camera. So I've got my egg, my mustard, my mayo, my 2 tablespoons of flour, and just a pinch of salt and pepper. So what we can go ahead now is to blend that batter up. You want to make sure everything is nice and incorporated. And you're going to end up with something that looks like this. So once your batter is well mixed and well incorporated, what we can go ahead and do is dump our chicken tenders in there. So I've bought chicken tenders. As you look at a chicken breast, that's the most tender piece of the chicken breast, the little hanging on attachment there. If you don't have chicken fillets or chicken tenders like this, not a problem. As suggested in the recipe, all you need to do is cut your chicken breast into a similar size looking piece. So you want to cut your chicken breast, if that's what you're working with, into about a 1 inch slice diagonally. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is dump these now into my batter. And what you're going to want to do is give those a good toss so that everything, all your chicken is very well incorporated with that batter. All right. So making sure that that chicken is well tossed and in the batter. So that's sitting there nicely. And then the next step we're going to do is to press that into our panko breadcrumbs and make it all sorts of crispiness, deliciousness. So I'm going to take a quick pause here just to allow everybody to catch up if needed. And if anybody has any questions, that chat is available to you to get your questions answered. Any comments, just let us know. Well, if there's no questions or comments at this time, I mean, why don't you let us know in the chat? You having fun? All right. Seems like people are having just as much fun as me. And don't worry, we're going to have you, your friends, your partner, the whole family fed in less than 30 minutes here. So now that everybody's chicken is well battered, you've got your toasted panko breadcrumbs in another bowl. And what we're going to do now is just piece by piece, what you can do is grab that chicken with some tongs. And this is the best part about this recipe as well, is there's no messy hands. You can go ahead, toss that chicken into your panko breadcrumb mixture. And what you want to do is just pick up some of those breadcrumbs, toss them right on the top and press that in. Want to make sure everything is well coated. And we're one step closer to having some crispy chicken. So what you can do is go ahead and put that right back on your sheet pan. If you do have a rack that you can put on top of the baking pan, it's going to allow those chicken fingers to cook even more evenly. But I don't even have one right now, so no problem to that at all if you do not have one. You can continue to go ahead and batter each piece of that chicken. So a reminder, we're just going to pick up the chicken, going to toss it in that bowl, grab some of the extra panko breadcrumbs, sprinkle those right on top, and press to coat. And as you can see, I mean, your hands stay quite clean. That's usually the worst part about breading anything, is that you end up with two hands just filled with guck. With this method, no need. I'm going to continue to keep breading this chicken. So this recipe makes a fairly healthy portion for two or three people, but for any bigger families or big eaters, the recipe, this whole recipe, both the mac and cheese and the chicken, it can be easily doubled or tripled to suit your needs. So continuing to coat that chicken, got just a couple pieces left. And if you have a little bit of panko breadcrumb left over, not a problem. It's definitely better to have too much left over than not enough. Just like a lot of things in life. All right. So, I mean, I got a fair bit of panko left over. So as I said, not a problem if you do. Just want to make sure all those tenders are nice and coated. Brandon's asking, do you need the mayonnaise and the mustard for the crispy chicken? I would say no. I mean, if you aren't going to include those, you might want to include just a little bit, about half the amount of water. Otherwise, you're going to get a very thick batter if you just use the eggs and the flour. So what I would suggest, you just want to thin that batter out until you have, what feels like the right consistency. The mustard in this situation is really just helping with flavor. The oil from the mayonnaise helps a little bit to crisp things up, but it won't be the end of the world if you don't use them. All right, so I'll pause, like I said, just to allow everybody to catch up on the chicken a little bit here. And what's important to just make sure is that your chicken is well spaced out on the pan. You don't want them, spooning each other by any means. And this goes for anything that you're looking to crisp up in the oven, or even when you're sautéing things in the pan. When you keep things too close to each other, it allows moisture to build, steam to create, and as a result, you don't get that crispiness that we're looking for. So make sure your things are well spaced out on that baking sheet. You can see here, I've got my Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 delicious tenders for this evening. All right, so once you've tossed your tenders in that delicious toasted breadcrumb mix, we're gonna get our favorite oil spray back out. And we're just going to, once again, vertically, to avoid blowing any of those breadcrumbs off, just give the chicken a light coating of oil. We're doing everything we can here to replicate, that deep fryer without all that extra calories, adding a little bit of oil to help crisp things up. Once you've added a little bit of oil, I suggest just sprinkling them, with just a little bit of salt. We didn't add any salt to that original panko, those original panko breadcrumbs, so just sprinkling a little bit on top. Inner Salt Bay. And once everybody has done that, what we're going to do is go ahead and pop these tenders in our oven. So everybody's oven should still be fully heated at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook the tenders for about 8 minutes, flip those tenders, and then cook them for another 8 minutes. So if everybody can let me know in the chat, is everybody ready to pop those tenders in the oven? Who's hungry? All right, looks like most people are ready. So let's go ahead, pop those tenders, nicely well spaced out, sprayed with oil and a sprinkle of salt. Let's get those in our oven. Hey Google, 8-minute timer. All right, so now I know some people said mac and cheese is their fave, so this is the time. Let's get going on our mac and cheese. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our macaroni. So again, not sure everybody knows what 6 ounces of macaroni looks like. So depending on the shape of your macaroni, I mean, I've got pretty small ones here, but this is just over a cup, a heaping cup. What we can do is go ahead and dump that into our fry pan or small saucepan, like so. And what we want to do is top it with just enough water to cover it. We don't want to use tons of water. We want just enough cold water to cover the macaroni. So in my situation, that's looking like just about a cup of water. And the reason for this is that by using less water, the water will soak up a lot of that starch from the pasta. And by having starchier water, that's going to help us create a perfect emulsification that's going to result in that creamy, delicious, cheesy sauce. So what we can do is get that water in the pasta, and you can just add a pinch of salt. It's always important to salt your water when cooking any pasta. So just a pinch of salt in here, maybe 2 for good measure. We can go ahead and turn that on to high heat. And reminder, if you didn't set a timer, now is the time for that chicken, because we're going to start cooking this macaroni, and I would hate for you to forget about that chicken in the oven. So I've got my heat on now. Unfortunately, working with electric, so it takes a little bit of time to get hot. But what we're going to do with this macaroni is bring it to a boil and then continue to cook it, for about 6-7 minutes until almost all of that water is absorbed. So like I said, it'll be about 6, 7 minutes. So once our water is absorbed in our macaroni here, this will probably be the perfect time to flip those chicken tenders. Cindy asked, how high should the burner be on? We're looking for a boil here, so you can turn it on as high as it goes. So while we wait for that pan to heat up, the second secret ingredient of three, all of three ingredients in this mac and cheese is evaporated milk. And the reason for this is that evaporated milk has a lot of concentrated proteins. So just like making that pasta water extra starchy, by using this evaporated milk, those proteins are going to help create that delicious emulsification. You're not going to get a chunky cheese sauce with this. There's nothing worse, than a gritty cheese sauce. And this evaporated milk coupled with that starchy pasta water is going to do just that for you. I'm going to go ahead and open my can of evaporated milk and measure out 3/4 of a cup of that. I've got my 3/4 of a cup, and then let's watch this pasta heat up here. So once it comes to a boil, as the bubbles start to rise to the surface, you're going to want to make sure you just keep stirring that mac and cheese to allow all this water to absorb, become super starchy, and help us make that delicious creamy sauce. I'm going to see if I can switch back to having my phone live as well, but it seems like we had some issues with that earlier. All right, so on my very slow stove, I mean, if you're cooking with gas, this is probably happening a lot faster for you. But if you're a little bit behind, great chance to catch up. I'm starting to see some bubbles form. I'm just going to continue stirring that pasta until almost all of the water is absorbed. We want to leave a little bit of that water. As I mentioned, that starchy water is really going to help emulsify things. All right. So you can see the bubbles starting to form here on the screen. And we're starting to get that nice boil. And we're going to continue letting that boil, stirring frequently here until almost all that water is absorbed. So it looks like I've got about 1 minute left on my timer. So just a reminder for everybody to watch your timer that you hopefully set or if you have that timer in your head, it's just about 1 minute until we need to flip those chicken tenders. And here's another great tip for you. I mean, if you need to, make pasta in a flash and you're only making it for, one or two or three people, not a whole lot of pasta. What I like to do is to cook the pasta in a frying pan like this, as opposed to your standard saucepan. By e- extending the surface area of the pasta, it just allows it to cook that much faster. So that's a tip you can keep in mind for the future. Okay, so my timer is up. I'm going to give this a quick another stir. You just want to make sure that none of that macaroni is sticking to the bottom of the pan. Okay, so I'm going to pull these chicken tenders out. Give these a quick flip. And you can see the size of my chicken tenders here. I mean, if yours are more like chicken arms, then you might want to just cook them for a few more minutes. So those go back in the oven. Okay, Google, 8-minute timer, another 8 minutes. And as you can see, my pasta is really starting to come together here. In about one more minute, I think most of that water should be absorbed. And what you can do as a quick test is just grab a bite of that pasta, make sure it's almost cooked. As the Italians call it, al dente. You don't want that mushy pasta. You want it just to still be a little bit firm, but cooked through. So as you can see, almost all of my water has been absorbed here. All right, so this is the point now where you want to go ahead and add your 3/4 of a cup of evaporated milk. And now we're going to give it a good stir and allow that evaporated milk to come back to a boil. So we want to see, lots of those bubbles again. And as soon as that evaporated milk comes to a boil, we're going to add in all of this cheesy goodness. All right, so you can see the bubbles starting to form. We just want to keep stirring this. About 10 more seconds, I think, and we'll get this to a full boil. All right, so as you can see, we've got those big bubbles. That's what we're looking for. Going to go ahead and add all of my cheese. And what I want to do now is turn that heat down to low. So if you were in high before, whoops, now we're going to turn that down to low. And what you're going to want to do now is just continually stir that cheese in until you get that nice, creamy, rich sauce. As you can see, it's really starting to come together. And we're just going to let that sauce thicken a bit. So it's just going to cook for about another minute or two till we get a nice, thick, creamy sauce. We've got about 5 minutes left on my timer for the chicken fingers. So for those of you who want to kick things up a notch, we're going to make a classic buffalo sauce. So what I have in the bowl here is just a quarter cup of unsalted butter. And just the suggestion to use unsalted butter in this situation. You know, hot sauce already has a lot of sodium in it. So if you use salted butter, no worries. It might just be a little on the salty side, but that's just fine. So we're going to go ahead and melt this butter. I'm just going to use the microwave. And remember, just continuing to stir this mac and cheese here. That looks delicious. All right, I've got about 4 minutes left on my timer for those chicken bites. Everything is going to come together perfectly, right on time, and everybody will have you eating, well fed, and a very popular person around your household in less than 10 minutes here. All right, so just a reminder to keep stirring that. We don't want it to scald, but we do want it just to thicken up a little bit. All right, so I've got my melted butter here. And now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add a half cup of Frank's Red Hots, or any of your favorite hot sauces that you got lying around. It's suggested to use like a Louisiana style, but maybe you're a person that likes a bit more heat. The choice is up to you. All right, that mac and cheese looks incredible. So I'm going to go ahead and add a half cup of that hot sauce. And I'm just going to stir that up. With my butter. And what that's going to create is a nice orangey buffalo sauce. All right. So, how good does that look? Let me know in the chat. That looks better than any KD, any Annie's, any PC white cheddar that I can think of. And one less ingredient. So I've got about a minute and a half left on my timer. Let us know in the chat. How's your mac and cheese looking? Are you just ready to dive right in? I know I am. So I think now's a good time right now with your mac and cheese, just to sample it. I mean, that's the best part about being the cook, right? So take a bite of that mac and cheese. If it needs a little bit more salt, now is the time to add it. You can go ahead and add some freshly cracked pepper if you so choose, which I seem to be struggling with here. Delicious. And if you find your mac and cheese has maybe gotten a little bit too thick, you can just thin it out with a little bit of water, and it's going to get right back to that perfect consistency. All right, 30 seconds on the clock for my tenders. Who's hungry? I know I sure am. And we're going to be eating this delicious meal, hopefully surrounded by friends and family in absolutely no time. All right, there is my friendly reminder. All right. So it's time to grab those tenders out of the oven. As you can see, nice and crispy, nice and golden brown. And it's going to be that perfect crunch that we're looking for. All right, so you've practically done it. You've made, two of some of my favorite comfort food classics here. So what we're going to do now, let's put it all together. And it's almost time to. All right, get the angle here. So if you've decided to, kick things up a notch, what we can do is just go ahead. We're going to plate our mac and cheese. So where did my spoon go? Give that one last stir. You can take a nice scoop of that, add it to the plate. Creamy, cheesy, no gritty cheese sauce here. And then what I'm going to do is, this is now a good opportunity, if you like. You can top this mac and cheese with anything. In my situation, what I'm going to do is kick things up an even notch further. Add a couple of pickled jalapenos on top. Green onions would be great. Some crispy onions, some sautéed onions. The sky's the limit. I'm going to add a few hickory sticks for a little bit of crunch. And now to finish things off, what we can do is grab one of our chicken tenders, or a couple of them, just toss them right in that sauce. And top like so. So you've done it. You've helped contribute, to some fantastic fundraising in the name of men's health, and you've made this absolutely delicious comfort food classic. So as a reminder, if you haven't donated your $10, now is please the time to do so. Other than that, I know you're going to be one of the favorite people in your house for now and for all the subsequent times that you make this recipe. This video will be recorded and shared with all participants, and you have that recipe card. So, bon appetit.